Welcome to Through the Bible with Pastor Michael, a podcast from First Baptist Church in Mustang, Oklahoma. Here's Pastor Michael.
We're back today walking through 1 Samuel, looking at chapters 4, 5, and 6 today. Let's get to our 5 observations from our reading. Number 1, the Philistines defeated Israel in battle, and so Israel brought the Ark of the Covenant from Shiloh, but the Philistines defeated them again. So we read about this in chapter 4. The Philistines are victorious in battle. The army of God brings the Ark of the Covenant from Shiloh, brings it up to where Hophni and Phinehas are. The Philistines get nervous and anxious because they hear all of this commotion going on, and yet they go back to battle, and the Philistines defeat them again. It says in chapter 4, verse 10, the Philistines fought, and Israel was defeated, and they fled, every man to his home, and there was a very great slaughter, for 30,000 foot soldiers of Israel fell. The ark was then captured, and the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, died. Our second observation is that a Benjamite then reported to Eli that his 2 sons had died, and that the ark was captured. When that happened, Eli falls. He's an older man. When he falls, he breaks his neck, and then he dies. It tells us in verse 15, Eli was 98 years old. His eyes were set so that he could not see. And then he falls backward in verse 18 from his seat by the side of the gate, and his neck was broken, and he died, for the man was old and heavy. He had judged Israel for 40 years. A third observation is the Philistines take the captured ark, but all the cities they take it to get afflicted by God. So they've captured the ark. The Benjamite goes back to tell Eli they've captured the ark. Eli falls over. He dies. And then the Philistines take the ark, and they brought it, verse 1, chapter 5, from Ebenezer to Ashdod. And the hand of the Lord, verse 6, was heavy against the people of Ashdod. And they said, "What shall we do with the ark of the covenant?" And they said, "Let the ark of the covenant of Israel be brought around to Gath." And so they brought the ark of the covenant of Israel there. But the hand of the Lord goes out against them also. And eventually, a fourth observation is the Philistines decide to return the ark. Everywhere the ark is going, these plagues and tumors are breaking out, and they decide we don't want to have this. We need to return this. And then eventually, a fifth observation is the ark comes back to Beth Shemesh. We read about that in chapter 6, along with this decision-making process they go through, and they return the ark to Beth Shemesh. Verse 13 says, "The people there at Beth Shemesh were reaping their wheat harvest in the valley, and when they lifted up their eyes, they saw the ark. They rejoiced to see it." What can we do with this? 5 applications for us. Number 1, don't treat God as a good luck charm. So many times I think that we miss the whole point. The point in the Old Testament of the people of God is that they are to be His people, to worship Him, to serve no other gods, to take seriously the commands that He gives them, not to play fast and loose with them. We see this in our own life sometimes when we have a Bible sitting on a shelf, or a Bible laid open on a desk, but it's an accessory, it's decoration. Or when we only pray when we really want something, or we only pray when life gets really difficult. But God's not our good luck charm. He is to be worshiped, revered, feared, loved. We are to hold Him in His proper place in our life. We can't just take the things of God and try to use them as some kind of a charm that we just access when we really need it, or when something in our life goes astray. A second application is that failure to obey the Lord has wide consequences. We see this over and over and over again in the Old Testament, where the people sin, and the sin of the people has such wide and massive consequences. But the truth is that that happens in our life too. That the sin that we tolerate and the sin that we commit never impacts just us. Our sin always impacts more people than we think, but with greater consequences than we think. It's usually true that our sin, the net of our sin, so to speak, goes out and extends so much wider than we realize, which is why we've got to be, as God's people, fighting sin with all of our heart and trusting the Lord and honoring Him. We need to be people who are quick to confess our sin. Sin is such a bigger thing than we realize. Its consequences are so much worse than we expect them to be. Sin is such a significant issue for the people of God. It's just that it's so common and we're so used to it that we can even become comfortable with our own sin. But that just cannot be. We've got to recognize that failure to obey the Lord has much wider consequences than we realize. Number 3, God's authority will never be defeated. Ultimately, God rules and reigns whether the Philistines win a battle or not. God is authoritative whether the Philistines possess the Ark of the Covenant or not. There is nothing that God's enemies can do that's going to defeat him. Even the failures of God's people, as significant as that is, and as seriously as we should take our role as God's people, His authority will not be defeated. His authority won't be defeated because of weak spokesmen on His behalf. His authority will not be defeated because of strong opponents that line up against Him. Ultimately, we take heart and comfort in realizing that our God's power and authority has no rival. It has no equal. And that's good news for us. A fourth application: don't add God to your list of things you worship. That's not what worship is. To truly worship God is to see Him as the only God. The mistake that so many people make in Scripture and even in our life today is they want to add God to a list of things they worship. They want to love this thing and that thing and chase and pursue these goals, and they'll add a little bit of God to it. They want to chase worldly dreams, but they'll pray a little bit as they're doing that, or they'll go to church occasionally as they're doing that. That's not what worship is. And we see that even in the reading today, that you can't just take God and add Him to a list of other false gods. Instead, true worship, true reverence of God is that He is the only one that you worship. So worship is not about adding God to a list of things that you worship. It's about doing away with all other gods and having no other gods besides Him. Fifthly, we should represent God to others in a way worthy of His name. The way that we live our lives, the way we speak about God, the things that we teach, the decisions we make, the way that we handle things, everything about us should be done in such a way that we are a faithful representative of God and that we speak and act worthy of His name. Just like Ephesians 4:1 that we just read, walk in a manner worthy of His calling He's given us. We are His ambassadors, and so we represent Him, and we want to make sure that we represent Him in a way that's worthy of His name. And then we're reading today Proverbs 25, verses 1 to 14. The summary is very brief. Do not lie, gossip, or boast. Be careful with your words. Do not lie, gossip, or boast. Proverbs 25, verse 11. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a setting of silver. Use your words to glorify God, to speak things that are true, to speak things that are edifying, and to speak words that point to the greatness of God, not ourselves. Let's watch our words today and seek to represent the Lord in a Christ exalting way in every way that we can on this day.